Salmond and the current SNP Europe spokesperson. Thanks so much for coming in to talk to us, Mr. Salmond. Mrs May is right, isn't she, when she says that the SNP is obsessed with independence?
No, the Prime Minister's living in a world of make-believe. Apart from having no idea how to make a conference speech, which was painfully evident, the reality is that the English health service is in a state of collapse. The prison system in England is in chaos, and as we see today, the schools are in open revolt, while her government, that's Theresa May's government, is consumed by Brexit. In Scotland we have our full share of problems, but our health service is performing much better than it is in England.
Well, hold on a minute. You haven't matched the spending increases on the NHS in England, have you?
But our health, well, firstly, we spend more on health per head than you do in England, and our accident and emergency rates are 10% better in Scotland than they are in England. And if we take education, for example, 55% of Scottish kids go to higher education. That's 10% more than the figure in England.
Yes, but what about Scottish schools?
So in all these characteristics, the Scottish public services are performing much better. Nicola Sturgeon has just been triumphantly re-elected as First Minister of Scotland after 10 years in office. Theresa May has been elected by no one, and her government is obviously and completely consumed by the Brexit process. So Theresa May's speech is a fantasy speech from a Prime Minister who clearly has little or no understanding of the reality of Scottish politics.
OK, well, let's talk about the reality of Scottish politics. You mentioned education and further education. What about the point that Scottish schools are outperformed in every category by schools in England, Northern Ireland, Estonia and Poland? Well, she's right, isn't she, when she says public services are being neglected? No,
firstly, that's not true. I mean, if you look at the PISA rankings on which that is based, there is little difference between Scottish and English schools and the characteristics. But the OECD, who actually produced these rankings, have just given a glowing report to the new curriculum for excellence. And as I pointed out, if measured by the number of pupils who go on to excellence, onto higher education, it's 10% higher in Scotland than it is in England. In England it's been falling, incidentally, because of punitive tuition fees. In Scotland, tuition is free, and as a result 55% of our kids. In terms of general attainment, we're now at 92% of people emerging from schools onto positive destinations. That means work, apprenticeships or higher education. These are figures that can only be dreamt of in England at the present moment. But the choice of this is for the people. The people of Scotland have judged the SNP government on our last 10 years and have just been elected Nicola Sturgeon with 47% of the vote. Theresa May has been elected by nobody. She wasn't even elected by Conservative MPs. So far be it for this Prime Minister to come to Scotland and start attacking a government which has been resoundingly re-elected by the Scottish people. It's their judgment that counts,
okay,
not Theresa May's.
Let's talk about the referendum. When are we going to know when the SNP want another referendum?
Well, the ball's in the Prime Minister's court. She has Nicola Sturgeon's...
Well, it's in yours to ask for one, though, isn't it?
Well, sorry, the proposal that Nicola Sturgeon has put forward, and I know the BBC must understand this, that's been put forward by Nicola Sturgeon to say, look, you've rejected our other proposals on Brexit. We want to keep Scotland in the single market, even if the rest of the UK leaves. A government minister, a Secretary of State, has described that as possible. So Theresa May has to respond to the clear wishes of the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish people, not just the SNP, but the overwhelming majority of the Scottish people and the Scottish Parliament. Now, if Theresa May says, look, we're not interested in that, we're not interested in jobs, investment, the future of Scotland, we don't care, then, of course, as Nicola Sturgeon says, an independence referendum becomes very likely indeed. But the ball is very much in the Prime Minister's court. OK, the ball's in the Prime Minister's court. That could sound, though, that you're actually afraid of another referendum. How convinced are you that there really is an appetite and that you would win one? Well, the last poll that I saw support for Scottish independence at 49%. If I can remind you, I called a referendum on Scottish independence in 2012 when support for Scottish independence was at 28%. So anybody believes that Nicola compunction, if it's necessary and if the Prime Minister rejects the compromise proposal, will have any compunction at calling an independence referendum at 49% in the polls, then you seriously misjudge the First Minister of Scotland.
So you're not scared that if you did call another one and you lost it, that would be it for the SNP?
No, I think Downing Street is terrified. I saw a quote from Downing Street this week saying, oh my goodness, we're going to have 3 constitutional crises altogether, Brexit, a Scottish referendum and the possibility of direct rule in Northern Ireland. As if they were like, buses all arriving at the same time. It's within the ability and competence of Downing Street to avoid this. But Theresa May has to show that she has some understanding of the Scottish political situation, and she showed precious little of that today. What she announced today was a power grab. She's actually proposing that if Brexit goes ahead, the powers that should come back to Scotland and fishing, farming and a range of other issues, she's going to retain them at Westminster because she likes the look of the Scottish economic zone. It's a fundamental attack on the very principle and foundation statute of the Scottish Parliament of 1999, which said specifically that anything that wasn't reserved to Westminster should be run in Scotland. This is a Prime Minister who's attacking the very foundations of the Scottish Parliament, and she'll do it to her.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.